All right, let us go forth, brethren and sisters. Part 3, this is Doctrine and Covenants, section 127 and 128 as we have it now. Volume 11 will actually be quite short because the next two revelations are very close together and they're very close to the beginning, which is very nice. So we will begin actually with section 127. The earliest copy is actually a letter to the saints in Nauvoo. It is in the handwriting of William Clayton. It is tri-folded in a letter style and sealed with a wafer. It is 3 pages long. So that is the most original copy we get, is just a letter. A copy is also found in Joseph Smith's journal, which is dated from December of 1841 to December of 1842. It is published in the Times and Seasons. It is also in the 1844 edition of the Doctrine and Covenants, and it is in the Manuscript History of the Church, and we are now in History of the Church, Volume 5. So we are trudging right along. Circumstantial introduction to this, we get letter rights. This is what we get from the original letter. September 1st, 1842, to all the saints in Nauvoo. That's all you get. Joseph Smith's journal gives us this. President Joseph sent the following letter to W. Clayton by Brother Erastus H. Derby. The president wrote it and requested it to be read before the saints when assembled at the grove near the temple for preaching, which was done according to his request. And then the letter begins with a date and a salutation, like we had before. Times and Seasons copy gives us this. The following letter was read to the saints in Nauvoo last Sunday week, and a copy forwarded to us for publication, and cordially we give it hearty welcome and a happy spread among those who love the truth for truth's sake. And the manuscript history states, Thursday, September 1, 1842, during the morning in the assembly room and in the afternoon at home, attending to business, I wrote the following. There are no changes in modern section headings for this, and so the historical introduction will give us the rest. On the 1st of September, 1842, Joseph Smith dictated to William Clayton a letter addressed to church members in Nauvoo, Illinois, informing them that he was planning to leave the city in order to evade arrest and extradition to Missouri. Joseph Smith had been eluding officers seeking his arrest for most of August, primarily by concealing himself in private residences of friends in and near Nauvoo, and just across the Mississippi River in Iowa Territory. On the 24th of August, Illinois Governor Thomas Carlin wrote to Emma Smith indicating that he would not relent in his efforts to have Joseph Smith arrested in order to resolve the extradition matter. Emma received that letter by the 27th of August, which may have been one reason for Joseph Smith's departure from Nauvoo. This letter, actually, I read it. It's actually very kind, and it's very clear that he is just performing his duty as the governor, and he is not trying to make anybody's life any harder, and he recognizes that it must be very difficult for Emma, et cetera, et cetera. But it's actually a very nice letter. He's very sweet. He's very kind in his language, very apologetic about the whole thing, but he's like, I have a duty. When a governor asks for extradition, I have to comply. And so we have that copy of that letter in what's called the Book of the Law of the Lord. So very interesting. Like, I have to give Thomas Carlin some credit for trying to handle this in the most diplomatic way that he could, while at the same time trying to do his duty. We further get from the historical introduction, Joseph Smith also included in the letter the text of a revelation on baptisms for the dead. He had first taught the doctrine of baptizing individuals on behalf of their deceased relatives in August 1840. Latter-day Saints performed the first of such baptisms in the Mississippi River until the font in the basement of the unfinished Nauvoo Temple was dedicated on the 8th of November, 1841, after which the ordinance was performed almost exclusively in the font. The saints recorded many, but not all, of these early baptisms for deceased individuals. In this letter, Joseph Smith emphasized the importance of having a recorder witness each baptism. Joseph Smith also informed the saints that a number of additional revelations concerning the ordinance and other topics were forthcoming, and promised he would send additional instruction in future correspondence. Joseph was literally on the run from the law, though, just to be really clear here. So, historical introduction again. On the 2nd of September, he heard that the sheriff of Adams County, Illinois, was coming to Nauvoo to arrest him. The next day, a deputy sheriff and 2 other men arrived at Joseph Smith's home, forcing Joseph to flee through the back door to the home of Newell K. Whitney. Joseph Smith likely thought that the public reading of his letter would lead officers of the law still in the city to discontinue their search for Joseph Smith in Nauvoo. So he kind of makes it clear, I have left Nauvoo. Did everybody hear that? I left Nauvoo. That's what he said. Okay, let's get into the content and footnotes of this. The letter actually starts this way. To all the saints in Nauvoo, forasmuch as the Lord has revealed unto me that my enemies both of Missouri and this state were again on pursuit of me, and insomuch as they pursue me without cause, and have not the least shadow or coloring of justice or right on their side in the getting up of their prosecutions against me, and inasmuch as their pretensions are all founded in falsehood of the blackest dye, I have thought it expedient and wisdom in me to leave the place for a season for my own safety and the safety of this people. Footnote 1 for this says, this refers to the accusation John C. Bennett and former Missouri Governor Lilburn W. Boggs made against Joseph Smith that he had been an accessory before the fact to Boggs' attempted assassination. All right. Further into the letter we get, I would say to all those with whom I have business that I have left my affairs with agents and clerks who will transact all business in a prompt and proper manner, and will see that all my debts are canceled in due time, by turning out property or otherwise as the case may require, or as the circumstances may admit of. Footnote 3 says, when Joseph Smith was in hiding, and during the months that followed, William Clayton was among those responsible for Joseph Smith's business affairs, including his ongoing bankruptcy proceedings, which I showed you already. This bankruptcy was something that nearly everybody was participating in and was evidenced by the extras that were printed in the newspapers printing all those filing bankruptcies. All right, so the law required those to be printed. And as I showed you before, these pages were dense and huge. So lots of people were doing this. All right, some problems with building. Letter states, and again, verily thus saith the Lord, let the work of my temple and all the works which I have appointed unto you be continued on and not cease, and let your diligence and your perseverance and patience and your works be redoubled. And you shall in no wise lose your reward, saith the Lord of hosts. And if they persecute you, so persecuted they the prophets and righteous men that were before you. For all this there is a reward in heaven. Footnote 7 for this says, a January 1841 revelation called for the construction of a temple in Nauvoo and a boarding house known as the Nauvoo House. By September 1842, work on the temple had slowed, and construction of the Nauvoo House was delayed. And I don't believe the Nauvoo House was ever actually made. Anyway, we do get the letter. We get the voice of the Lord in this letter. For I am about to restore many things to the earth pertaining to the priesthood, saith the Lord of hosts. And again, let all the records be had in order, that they may be put in the archives of my holy temple to be held in remembrance from generation to generation, saith the Lord of hosts. Footnote 11 says, in May of 1842, Joseph Smith started instructing several church leaders on new doctrine pertaining to the priesthood and temple-related ordinances. In a 17 June 1842 letter to Parley P. Pratt, Heber C. Kimball stated that, quote, we have received some precious things through the prophet on the priesthood that would cause your soul to rejoice, unquote. But that he was not at liberty to commit those instructions to writing. So again, still kind of under wraps. Joseph promises more on baptisms for the dead, which we will get into the next revelation, which we now call section 128. And so we end the letter this way. I now close my letter for the present, for the want of more time, for the enemy is on the alert, and as the Savior said, the prince of this world cometh, but he hath nothing in me. Behold, my prayer to God is that you all may be saved, and I subscribe myself your servant in the Lord, prophet and seer of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Joseph Smith. All right, moving on. Letters keep flying back and forth, reporting on missions. We're trying to clear Joseph Smith's name so he doesn't have to be on the run anymore. trying to keep newly minted enemies like John C. Bennett at bay. And then we get something on the 4th of September, 1842, called The Proverbs of Joseph Smith, and I want to read them, so let's read them. This is in the handwriting of Erastus Derby. It's 2 pages long, and those pages apparently have been chewed by a rodent. So that was forensically discovered. I'll take your word for it. Anyway, we don't know if anybody ever saw this or why they were given, but hey, it's a paper, so let's read it. It says this. Proverbs of Joseph. First, never exact of a friend in adversity what you would require in prosperity. Second, if a man prove himself to be honest in his deal, and an enemy come upon him wickedly through fraud or false pretenses, and because he is stronger than he maketh him his prisoner, and spoil him with his goods, never say unto that man in the day of his adversity, pay him what thou owest. For if thou doest it, thou addest a deeper wound, and condemnation shall come upon thee. And the riches shall be justified in the days of thine adversity, if they mock at thee. Third, never afflict thy soul for what an enemy hath put it out of thy power to do, if thy desires are ever so just. Don't let it bother you, I guess. Fourth, let thy hand never fail to hand out that thou owest, which is yet within thy grasp to do so. But when thy stock fails, say to thy heart, be strong, and to thine anxieties cease. For man, what is he? He is but doing upon the earth, and all through, though he demanded of the cattle of 1,000 hills, he cannot possess himself of his own life. God made him and thee, and gave all things in common. Fifth, there is one thing under the sun which I have learned, and that is that the righteousness of man is sin, because it exacteth overmuch. Nevertheless, the righteousness of God is just, because it exacteth nothing at all, but sendeth the rain on the just and the unjust, seed time and harvest, for all of which man is ungrateful. Okay, the Proverbs of Joseph. There you go. We do get a deed to Sarah Ann Whitney with no money changing hands, which seems to be some sort of a gift to her, so that's interesting. Sarah Ann Whitney, again, is one of the plural wives of Joseph at this point. And then we get section 128 of the Doctrine and Covenants as we have it today. It says a lot of things. I'll start with the introduction to the papers, sorry. It is in the handwriting of William Clayton. It's 9 pages long, so we got some length to this. It is a tri-folded letter, and it has remnants of a wax wafer that can be seen as kind of sealing it together as a letter that was delivered via courier, probably, or through the mail. We also get another copy of this in Joseph Smith's journal. We get a James Sloan copy in his own handwriting, which is kind of interesting. The Times and Seasons gets one, of course. The Doctrine and Covenants 1844 edition gets one. And we also get a copy in another version of the Times and Seasons, another edition of the Times and Seasons. The circumstantial introduction to section 128 is journeying September 6th or 7th, 1842, to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints sendeth greeting. The journal states, Sunday the 11th, at home all day. At present, President Joseph's request, the following letter, which himself dictated, which read to the saints at the grove, which was to be read at the saints near the grove of the temple. I'm making up for handwriting here. So it's kind of funny. The first one says he's journeying, and the second one says he's home all day, probably because he was trying to keep his hunters off the scent. Anyway, this is in William Clayton's hand, and Eliza R. Snow starts writing the content of the letter in Joseph Smith's journal, which is kind of fun. So the journal copy is actually written by Eliza R. Snow, which is kind of fun. We got a Sloan copy, which reads extracts from J. Smith's journal, or J. Smith's letter of September 6th, 1842. The Times and Seasons matches the letter's grading exactly, and the manuscript history differs a little. It says, Tuesday the 6th, I wrote as follows. And then you get the letter. There are no changes to the modern section headings, and this is a pretty important one, so I was a little surprised, nothing there. But we do get this from the historical introduction. It says, On the 7th of September, 1842, Joseph Smith dictated a letter addressed to the church giving further instructions on performing and recording baptisms for the dead. He wrote from the home of Edward Hunter, where he was hiding from men sent to arrest him on charges of complicity in the attempted murder of former Missouri Governor Lilburn W. Boggs. There you go. Joseph Smith's discussion of record keeping in this 7th of September letter was a vital step toward the procedural systemization of baptisms for the dead and the attendant records of those ordinances, as record keeping had been limited prior to September 1842 and often varied from branch to branch. The enhanced record-keeping efforts that Joseph Smith suggested resembled those that contemporaneous state and county recorders were making to maintain official copies of deeds and other records. Joseph Smith explained, however, that the saints needed to maintain an accurate record of these ordinances because the record would subsequently be written in heaven and become a book that the saints would offer to God. Further into this, in the letter, Joseph Smith also tied baptisms for the dead to his Nauvoo-era teachings regarding priesthood and dispensations of the gospel. He explained that through the ordinance, the saints could forge a generational chain between parents and children, just as there would be a, quote, welding together of the various keys and dispensations from Adam down to Joseph Smith in the dispensation of the fullness of times. Building on this teaching, Joseph Smith used the letter to recount briefly that he had been visited by ancient prophets who provided him with the necessary keys. And we have a lot of accounts from that. So that's Peter, James, and John, and Moses, Elias, Elijah. We've read about that already. We get a footnote here. The idea of dispensations, by the way, not being very unique to Latter-day Saints at the time. So footnote 5. 19th century Christians frequently referred to dispensations, such as the Mosaic dispensation, defining them as periods of divine involvement with humanity. During the previous years in Nauvoo, Joseph Smith had addressed these topics of priesthood and gospel dispensations on several occasions. Like other 19th century Christians, he taught that there had been gospel dispensations prior to Christ, although Joseph Smith held that people during these dispensations were aware of and taught about Christ. Joseph Smith's comments in these earlier dispensations also emphasized that Adam, Noah, and others held the keys of the priesthood from generation to generation, teaching that the church and its priesthood were linked to these earlier prophets. Joseph Smith urged the Latter-day Saints to seek for the glory of Abraham, Noah, Adam. Further in we get, at Joseph Smith's request, this letter was read to the saints at the grove near the temple. On September 11, 1842, William Clayton reported in Joseph Smith's journal that the letter, quote, made a deep and solemn impression on the minds of the saints, who manifested in their intentions to obey the instructions to the letter, unquote. Soon thereafter, General Church Recorder James Sloan began keeping a new record for baptisms for the dead. The first entry in the book was for proxy baptisms performed on the evening of September 11th, 1842, with the entries for that date reflecting the new instructions contained in this letter. So that night, they go into the water and they are getting baptized for their kindred dead. And if you are interested, I have actually found these baptismal records. This is the first baptismal record from that time. This is baptisms performed in the Mississippi River. And when you know it, I found this book on Family Search. So you can go on to familysearch.org and take a look at this if you want. I think that's kind of perfect because Family Search eventually is really about gathering names so that we can take them to the temple, which is really special. The document is over 100 pages long, so I will forbear on sharing too much, but I thought it was really special that we still have the records of the baptisms that were done in the river instead of in the temple. So enjoy that. I thought that was really special. Let's get into the content and footnotes, and then we'll be done. We open with this. It says, Journeying, September 6th or 7th, 1842. To the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints sendeth greeting. As I stated to you in my letter before I left my place, that I would write to you from time to time and give you information in relation to many subjects, I now resume the subject of the baptism for the dead, as that subject seems to occupy my mind and press itself upon my feelings the strongest, since I have been pursued by my enemies. Footnote 1 states, Joseph Smith was in hiding at this time. Journeying was likely written to conceal his whereabouts from those seeking his arrest and extradition. Further into the letter we get, now in relation to this matter, it would be very difficult for one recorder to be present at all times and to do all the business. To obviate this difficulty, there can be a recorder appointed in each ward of the city who is well qualified for taking accurate minutes, and let him be very particular and precise in making his record. Footnote 7. In addition to its municipal wards created for tax and election purposes, Nauvoo maintained ecclesiastical wards. In August 1842, the Nauvoo High Council resolved that Nauvoo's 3 ecclesiastical wards would be reorganized into 10 wards, with a bishop appointed over each ward. Additionally, 3 districts, each with a bishop, were designated immediately outside the city. And there you have it, your first hint of the word ward. So when you're going to your ward, that's where it comes from, is the way that they divided up Nauvoo. That's what it means. So branches, stakes, districts, sure, makes sense. Wards, it's one way to describe how a city is divided, and technically how stakes are divided now. All right. Let's see. Further into the letter we get, and the history of the whole transaction, naming also some 3 individuals that were present, if there be any present, who can at any time, when called upon to certify to the same, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. Footnote 10. Extant records indicate that Latter-day Saints began keeping a record of the names of those witnessing baptisms for the dead, beginning with entries dated September 11th, 1842, which we do not have anymore, unfortunately. So it used to be that if you were a witness, you were also written down as well. We do not do that in temples anymore, but that's what we have. Okay, further into the revelation we get. And when this is done on the general church book, the record shall be just and holy, and shall answer the ordinance just the same as if it had been seen with his eyes and heard with his ears, and made a record of the same on the general book. You may think this order of things to be very particular, but let me tell you that they are only to answer the will of God by conforming to the ordinance and preparation that the Lord ordained and prepared before the foundation of the world for the salvation of the dead who should die without a knowledge of the gospel. And Illinois law is being emulated here in footnote 14. So we get this. This idea was similar to one in the Illinois state law mandating that copies of official records made by the recorder be kept, quote, in the office of said Secretary of State for safekeeping, subject to be inspected by all persons concerned. Regardless of who entered the record into the books, they were to have the same force and effect as if the same were certified by the state recorder. The copies of the records in these books served as official and legal renderings of the documents in question. All right. Big legal stuff. Letter also says, and whatsoever you do not record on earth shall not be recorded in heaven, for out of the books shall they be, your dead, that is, be judged according to their works, whether they themselves have attended to the ordinances in their own propria persona, or by the means of their own agents, according to the ordinance which God has prepared for their salvation from before the foundation of the world. Propria persona means for oneself, if you would like to know. That is the Latin, propria persona, for oneself. The letter continues, now the great and grand secret of the whole matter, and the sum and bonum of the whole subject that is lying before us, consists in the obtaining the powers of the holy priesthood. For him to whom these keys are given, there is no difficulty in obtaining a knowledge of facts in relation to the salvation of the children of men, both as well for the dead, as for the living. Summum bonum, by the way, means the highest good. A little Latin for you. So propria persona is for oneself, and summum bonum means the highest good. The letter also gives a reason for baptism for the dead and proxy works. So this is towards the end here. It says, it is sufficient to know in this case that the earth will be smitten with a curse unless there is a welding link of some kind or another between the fathers and the children upon some subject or other. And behold, what is that subject? It is the baptism for the dead. For we, without them, cannot be made perfect. Neither can they, without us, be made perfect. Neither can they or us be made perfect without those who have died for in the gospel also. For it is necessary in the ushering in of the dispensation of the fullness of times, which dispensation is now beginning to usher in, that a whole and complete and perfect union and welding together of dispensations and keys and powers and glories should take place and be revealed in the days of Adam, even to the present time. And not only this, but that those things which ever have been revealed from the foundation of the world, but have been kept hid from the wise and prudent, shall be revealed unto babes and sucklings in this, the dispensation of the fullness of times. 2 footnotes here. Footnote 28. Bible commentator Adam Clarke wrote that the phrase might refer to a gospel dispensation, which is the consummation of all preceding dispensations, and the last that shall be afforded to man. Joseph Smith's Revelations applied the term to his time, stating that it was the final dispensation spoken of by Paul. Footnote 29 says, Joseph Smith taught that the priesthood was first given to Adam, who held the keys of it. In October 1840, Joseph Smith further explained that not only was Adam the first and father of all, but he was the first to hold the spiritual blessings, to whom was made known the plan of ordinances for the salvation of his posterity unto the end. And the truths of heaven would continue to be revealed through him until the end of the world. He further explained, Adam holds the keys of the dispensation of the fullness of times, i.e., the dispensation of all the times have been and will be revealed through him from the beginning to Christ, and from Christ to the end of all the dispensations that have to be revealed. During the October 1841 conference, Joseph Smith stated, quote, there has been a chain of authority and power from Adam down to the present time, unquote. We get a list of exciting events from the Restoration, the Book of Mormon. We get Moroni. We get the divine approval of 3 witnesses of the Book of Mormon, and later apostolic callings, right? Those are the 3 witnesses. That's Oliver, David, and Martin. Then we get this. The voice of Michael on the banks of the Susquehanna detecting the devil when he appeared as an angel of light. So that's a phrase, and it says this. We don't get any explanation of this event, but the Joseph Smith Papers gives us footnote 39, which says this. The Bible refers to at least 2 combative encounters between Michael and the devil, and this is in Jude 1:9 and Revelation 12:7. Thusly, from Jude, yet Michael the archangel, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses, durst not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, the Lord rebuke thee. Okay. Revelation 12:7 says, and there was war in heaven, Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought against his angels. And I just have to say, looking up, I was like, I'm curious about if there's any artwork about that, and it's like all generative AI that did that. So I'm going to forbear from that because it gets weird. Anyway, footnote 40 for this says, in June of 1839, Joseph Smith instructed the quorum of the 12 apostles how to detect Satan when he transforms himself nigh into an angel of light. Because not all were present for Joseph Smith's 1839 remarks, members of the 12 shared these instructions with each other, and Joseph Smith reiterated them when the opportunity arose. And I believe in our next section, or on our next episode, we're going to be talking about these 3 grand keys a little further. Officially, this is the one that's actually published. The letter continues, and again the voice of God in the chamber of old Father Whitmer's, this is Peter Whitmer Sr.'s, in Fayette, Seneca County, and at sundry times and in sundry diverse places throughout all the travels and tribulations of this Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and the voice of Michael the Archangel, the voice of Gabriel and of Raphael, and of diverse angels from Michael or Adam down to the present time, all declaring each one their dispensation, their rights, their keys, their honors, their majesty and glory, and the power of their priesthood, giving line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little and there a little, giving us consolation by holding forth that which is to come and confirming our hope. Footnote 44 says, Joseph Smith explained that Gabriel was Noah. He stated that Gabriel stands next in authority to Adam in the priesthood and was called of God to this office and was the father of all living in his day, and to him was given the dominion, unquote. So what that means is that because the earth was wiped out in a flood and everybody died, Noah sort of became a second Adam, right? And that after he passed, his new name was given to him as Gabriel. So apparently when Gabriel goes to, Mary and announces the birth of Jesus, apparently that was Noah, according to this. So take that as you will. Not much on Raphael, though. Footnote 45 says, Raphael is an angel spoken of in the Apocrypha. The book of Tobit states that Raphael was, quote, one of the 7 holy angels who present the prayers of the holy ones and enter before the glory of the Holy One, unquote. Beyond this reference, Joseph Smith did not make any further statements about a visitation by any angel identified as Raphael. Okay. Footnote 47. In 1839, Joseph Smith further taught that, quote, the keys have to be brought from heaven whenever the gospel is sent, unquote. And that whenever this was done, it was done under the authority of Adam. Quote, the keys were first given to him and by him to others, unquote. Peter, James, and John had received those keys from the Savior, Moses, and Elias on the mount when they were transfigured before him. Joseph Smith then explained that the priesthood he held had come from Peter, James, and John, and others, quote, in regular succession, unquote. So he just said this is the pattern. That's just how it happened. All right. And the letter also includes this, behold, the great day of the Lord is at hand, and who can abide the day of his coming? And who can stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire and like fuller's soap. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver, and he shall purify the sons of Levi and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. Let us therefore as a church and a people and as Latter-day Saints offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. Footnote 56. Both Joseph Smith and Cowdery noted that when John the Baptist conferred the Aaronic priesthood upon them on the 15th of May, 1829, he referenced Malachi's language regarding the offering of the sons of Levi. In October of 1840, Joseph Smith explained that the offering of the sons of Levi would be a part of, quote, the restitution of all things. It would take place when the temple of the Lord shall be built and the sons of Levi be purified and be fully restored. In 1841, Revelations specified that the Nauvoo temple was to be built in part for your memorials and for your sacrifices by the sons of Levi. And the letter concludes with Joseph Smith's signature. And there you go. So, quite a lot on this episode. Holy cow. We have now gone through the beginning of Volume 11. This is 4 volumes that we have gone through. And from henceforth, we will be getting into some kind of winding downs of things. So our next episode will be our last episode of chronological Joseph Smith Revelations. So you will see in the next episode what the very last official published revelation Joseph Smith ever gave was. And then after that, we're actually going to be going back in time. I've skipped over a couple of revelations because they are printed in our current Doctrine and Covenants in a certain way. And I kind of wanted to give a sense of how all this ties together. So we're going to be going kind of back in time for these revelations and then trying to fill in the rest of the history. Because basically what we get in our next episode is the rest of his revelations. And then after that, he's murdered. Not immediately after that, but I would say these revelations are in 1843. Joseph is murdered in the summer of 1844. So we're kind of coming to the end. So stick with us here on Filling in the History, and we will see you next time as we wind up the chronological revelations of Joseph Smith. Have a good week.